My stepmom's smile hid a dark secret. I found her Reddit rants trashing my deaf sister. She lied about us to strangers online. Then I saw her mention a plan for my brother. I sat at the kitchen table in our Portland, Oregon home, the glow of my laptop screen casting shadows on the walls. It was a quiet Friday night, the kind where the house felt too big for just me. Dad, David, was out with his wife, Lisa, and my siblings, Sophie and Jake, were at Mom's place in Salem. I'd just gotten back from a grueling week at the Oregon State Police Academy, my muscles aching, my mind fried. All I wanted was to zone out, maybe scroll through some mindless videos. But then I noticed something odd. Lisa's Reddit account was still logged in on my laptop. She must have used it last, forgetting to sign out. My stomach twisted with curiosity. I shouldn't have clicked, but I did. The first post I saw hit me like a punch. Lisa had written a long rant in some random subreddit, spilling venom about me, Sophie, and Jake. She called me unkempt, said my hair looked like a bird's nest, and claimed I'd screamed at her, calling her names I'd never even thought of. Lies. Every word. My chest tightened as I read on. She wrote about how much she hated having us around, how she couldn't stand Sophie's constant need for attention because of her deafness. She even mocked Sophie's attempts to teach her sign language, calling it a waste of time. I froze, my breath shallow. This wasn't the Lisa who smiled at us over dinner, who thanked me for helping with Ethan, my half-brother. This was someone else entirely. I scrolled further, my heart pounding. Lisa's posts were a diary of resentment. She wrote about how happy she felt when Sophie and Jake stayed at Mom's, how she counted the days until we all turned 18 and left. One comment made my blood run cold. I'd rather die than pretend to care about David's kids. My hands shook as I read it again, the words searing into my brain. She didn't just dislike us, she despised us. And the worst part, she'd been faking it. All those times I offered to babysit Ethan so she and Dad could have a night out, she'd smiled and said no, claiming she didn't want to burden me. Now I saw the truth in her comments. She thought I was leeching off David's house, too old to still be living here. I leaned back in the chair, the kitchen suddenly feeling too small. Lisa's words weren't just cruel, they were calculated. She'd painted us as monsters to strangers online, and they ate it up. Comment after comment agreed with her, egging her on. You don't have to love stepkids, one said. They're not your real family, another chimed in. My eyes stung as I read her attacks on anyone who dared defend us. She called one user naive for suggesting step-parents should try harder. It was like she'd built a secret world where she could hate us freely, no consequences. The worst was her comments about Sophie. My little sister, only 14, had spent years trying to help Lisa learn sign language. Sophie's face would light up when she taught anyone a new sign, her hands moving with pride. But Lisa called it pointless, said she couldn't be bothered to learn for a kid who's not even mine. I thought of Sophie's shy smile, how she'd always blamed herself when Lisa ignored her attempts to communicate. My throat burned with anger. How could someone be so cruel to a kid who just wanted to be understood? I closed the laptop, my hands still trembling. The house was silent, but my mind screamed. Lisa's fake warmth, her polite refusals when I offered to help, her concern when I hugged Dad too tightly, it all made sense now. She wasn't just distant, she was playing a role, and I'd fallen for it. I thought of all the times I'd shared my clothes with her, thinking we were bonding. What a joke. My stomach churned with betrayal, but beneath it, a spark of resolve flickered. I couldn't let this slide. Not for me, not for Sophie, not for Jake. I saved screenshots of everything, every post, every comment, years worth of her lies. I didn't know what I'd do yet, but I knew one thing. Lisa's secret was out, and I wasn't going to let her keep pretending. I drove to Salem the next morning, the screenshots of Lisa's Reddit posts burning a hole in my phone. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, the 40-minute trip from Portland feeling endless. I needed to tell Sophie. She deserved to know why Lisa always seemed to brush her off. When I pulled up to Mom's small house, Sophie was in the front yard, signing animatedly with Jake about some new video game. Her smile faded when she saw my face. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This was going to hurt her. Inside, we sat on Mom's worn couch, the smell of coffee lingering from breakfast. Sophie's eyes, wide and curious, followed my every move as I explained what I'd found. I kept my voice calm, but my hands shook as I showed her the screenshots. Lisa's words about her were brutal, calling her needy, mocking her efforts to teach sign language. Sophie's face crumpled, her hands falling still. She signed slowly. I thought she was trying. I thought I was bad at explaining. My heart broke. Sophie had spent years blaming herself, thinking her deafness was the problem. I hugged her tightly, whispering, "It's not you, Soph. It's her." She pulled back, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why does she hate me?" she signed, her movements sharp with pain. I didn't have an answer. All I could do was hold her hand, my own anger simmering. Sophie had always been the kindest of us, patient even when Lisa ignored her attempts to connect. To know Lisa had been laughing at her behind her back, it made my blood boil. I promised Sophie we'd figure this out together, but the hurt in her eyes stayed with me. Later, I dug deeper into Lisa's Reddit account, unable to stop myself. Each post was worse than the last. She didn't just hate us, she'd targeted Mom too. Karen, my mom, who'd always been polite to Lisa despite their rocky history, was painted as a meddling ex who poisoned us against her. One post claimed Mom had called Lisa names during a custody exchange, a complete lie. My jaw clenched as I read comments cheering Lisa on, telling her to cut contact with Mom and move far away with Dad and Ethan. Strangers were validating her delusions, and it made me sick. I found a thread where Lisa vented about Dad spending time with us. She called it unfair that he took me to dinner or helped Sophie with her hospital visits. "He's my husband," she wrote, "not their personal chauffeur." The jealousy dripped from every word. I thought of Dad's warm hugs, the way he'd light up talking about my academy training or Sophie's latest art project. Lisa saw that love as a threat. It was disgusting, the way she twisted our family into something ugly. Sophie, still sitting beside me, pointed out something I'd missed. She barely mentions Jake, she signed, her brow furrowed. I scrolled back through the posts. Sophie was right. Lisa's rants focused on me and Sophie, with only passing complaints about Jake's late nights or sleepovers. It was odd, like he was an afterthought. Maybe she doesn't see him as a problem, I said, but it didn't sit right. Jake was as much a part of our family as we were. Why the double standard? Sophie's hands moved quickly, her voice breaking through in short, halting words. She lets me watch Ethan, but not you or Jake. Why? I didn't know, but it added another layer to Lisa's hypocrisy. By the time we finished talking, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about me anymore. Sophie's tears, Lisa's lies about Mom, the way she'd manipulated everyone, it was too much. I knew we had to tell Jake and Mom. We couldn't let Lisa keep up this act. As Sophie wiped her eyes, I felt a mix of rage and protectiveness. Lisa had hurt my sister, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I couldn't sleep that night, Lisa's venomous words looping in my head. Sophie's tear-streaked face haunted me. By morning, I knew Jake had to know. He was at Mom's house in Salem, probably sprawled on the couch playing video games. I drove back from Portland, the familiar Oregon rain tapping my windshield. My hands still shook, not from nerves, but from a simmering anger. Lisa's lies weren't just words, they'd hurt my family, and I needed Jake on my side before we faced her. When I got to Mom's, Jake was in the living room, his lanky frame slouched over a controller. Sophie sat nearby, sketching quietly, her eyes still red. I didn't waste time. Jake, we need to talk, I said, my voice sharper than intended. He paused his game, eyebrows raised. I handed him my phone, the screenshots ready. As he scrolled, his jaw tightened. She said this about Sophie, he muttered, his voice low. He read about Lisa's complaints, how she called me a freeloader and Sophie needy, but barely mentioned him. She's ignored me too, he admitted, tossing the phone back. I thought she was just busy, but she's fake. Jake leaned forward, elbows on his knees. She's never let me watch Ethan, he said, his tone bitter. But Sophie can? That's weird. Sophie nodded, signing. She trusts me with him, but not you or Emma. It didn't add up. Jake's eyes narrowed as he recounted times Lisa brushed him off, pretending not to see him when he asked for help with homework. I thought she was just bad with sign language, he said, glancing at Sophie. But now I get it. She didn't care enough to try. Sophie's hands trembled as she signed. I thought it was my fault. My chest ached. Lisa's cruelty had cut deeper than I realized. We decided to tell Mom. Karen was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for dinner, her radio humming softly. I took a deep breath and started from the beginning. Lisa's Reddit account, the lies about me, the cruelty toward Sophie, the attacks on Mom herself. Karen's knife froze mid-chop. Her face hardened as I showed her the translated posts, especially the ones calling her a meddling ex who ruined Lisa's life. She's been smiling to my face for years, Mom said, her voice shaking with fury. And writing this garbage? She slammed the knife down, the sound sharp in the quiet kitchen. No one talks about my kids like that. Mom paced, her hands clenched. This isn't just mean, it's sick, she said. She's lying to strangers, making you kids sound like monsters. I showed her the comments where people egged Lisa on, telling her to ditch us and move away with Dad and Ethan. Mom's eyes flashed. She's not getting away with this, she declared. Your father needs to know. Sophie signed, what if Dad doesn't believe us? Her voice, small and halting, broke my heart. I squeezed her hand. He will, Soph. We've got proof. Jake, usually the laid-back one, was fuming. Dad offered to pay for her sign language classes, he said. She always said she was too busy. Now we know why. The room felt heavy, the weight of Lisa's betrayal pressing on us. Mom sat down, her face set. We're telling David together, she said. All of us. He needs to see every word she wrote. I nodded, my stomach twisting with nerves. Confronting Dad wouldn't be easy. He loved Lisa, thought she was good for us, but he had to know the truth. As we planned, Sophie's hands moved slowly. Will Ethan be okay? She signed, her worry for our half-brother clear. I hadn't thought about him much, caught up in my anger. We'll make sure he's fine, I promised, though I wasn't sure how. Mom hugged Sophie, her voice firm. We're a family. We'll handle this. For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. Lisa's lies had torn us apart, but maybe the truth would bring us closer. I pulled into the driveway of Dad's house in Portland, my heart pounding like a drum. The screenshots were saved on my phone, a ticking bomb of truth. I'd told Mom and my siblings I'd confront Lisa first, alone, before we all talked to Dad. It felt right to give her a chance to explain, though deep down, I doubted she'd own up. The house was quiet when I stepped inside, the faint smell of Lisa's lavender candles lingering. She was in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone, her face calm, like she hadn't spent years spewing hate online. My stomach churned, but I squared my shoulders. This was it. Lisa, I said, my voice steady despite the rage bubbling inside. She looked up, her smile faltering when she saw my expression. I saw your Reddit account. Her eyes widened, her phone slipping slightly in her hand. I didn't give her time to interrupt. I read everything. The posts about me, Sophie, Jake, the lies about Mom, how you hate us, how you can't wait for us to leave. My voice shook, but I kept going. You called Sophie needy, said learning sign language was pointless. You've been faking it this whole time. Lisa's face flushed, her lips parting in shock. That's my private space, she snapped, her voice sharp. You had no right to go through my stuff. I laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the quiet kitchen. Private? It's Reddit, Lisa. You posted it for the world to see. You lied about me yelling at you, about Mom being a problem. You said you'd rather die than care about us. Her eyes darted away, but she didn't deny it. That silence hit harder than any excuse. She stood, crossing her arms. It's just venting, she said, her tone defensive. Being a stepmom is hard. hard. You wouldn't understand. I stepped closer, my hands clenched. Venting isn't lying, Lisa. Venting isn't mocking a 14-year-old for being deaf. You let Sophie think she was the problem when you ignored her. My voice cracked, thinking of Sophie's tears. You let me think we were okay, that you liked me. I shared my clothes with you. I offered to babysit Ethan, and you wrote, I'm a freeloader. Lisa's jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. It's not personal, she said, like that made it better. It's just how I feel. I needed somewhere to be honest. I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. Honest? You made up stories to get strangers to pity you. If someone else found this, if they knew who you were, I could lose my spot at the academy because of your lies. Her eyes flickered with something guilt, maybe, but it vanished quickly. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said. It's not like I meant for you to see it. That's your defense? I asked, my voice rising. You didn't mean for me to catch you? You think it's okay to hate us as long as we don't know? She opened her mouth, then closed it, her hands gripping the counter. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Mom knows, Sophie knows, Jake knows. We're telling Dad tomorrow, and we're showing him everything. Her face paled, her fingers trembling. For a second, I thought she'd apologize, show some remorse. Instead, she turned away. Do what you want, she muttered, then stormed out of the kitchen, slamming her bedroom door. I stood there, the silence deafening. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. I'd hoped for something, an apology, an explanation, anything to show she wasn't the monster her posts made her out to be. But she didn't even try. She just ran. I sank into a chair, my hands shaking as I stared at my phone. The screenshots stared back, a record of her betrayal. I thought of Sophie, blaming herself for Lisa's coldness. Jake, brushed off like he didn't matter. Mom, painted as a villain for no reason. My anger flared, but so did my resolve. Lisa could hide in her room, but she couldn't hide from the truth. I texted Mom and my siblings, letting them know what happened. She didn't apologize, I wrote. She's mad I looked. Mom replied instantly. We're telling your father tomorrow. Stay strong. I nodded to myself, the weight of the next day settling in. Confronting Lisa was hard, but facing Dad with all this would be harder. He loved her. Would he believe us? I pushed the thought away. We had the proof. He had to. Sunday morning came too fast. The drive back to Portland felt heavier than ever. The Oregon sky gray and oppressive. Mom, Jake, Sophie, and I had agreed to meet at Dad's house to lay everything bare. My phone, loaded with Lisa's Reddit posts, felt like a lead weight in my pocket. Sophie sat beside me in the car, her hands fidgeting, signing nervously. What if Dad takes her side? I forced a smile, though my stomach nodded. He won't, Soph. He loves us. But doubt gnawed at me. Dad thought Lisa was perfect. Would he believe the woman he married could be this cruel? We pulled up to the house, Dad's old pickup in the driveway. Lisa's car was gone, probably dodging us after yesterday's confrontation. Inside, Dad was at the kitchen table sipping coffee, his face lighting up when he saw us. Hey, my crew, he said, pulling Sophie into a hug. She managed a small smile, but her eyes were red. Mom stood stiffly, her arms crossed. Jake slouched against the counter, avoiding Dad's gaze. I took a deep breath. Dad, we need to talk. It's serious. His smile faded as I pulled out my phone, opening the screenshots. Lisa left her Reddit account logged in on my laptop. I started, my voice steady but tight. I saw her posts, about us, about Mom. I handed him the phone, watching his face as he scrolled, his brow furrowed, then his jaw clenched. She wrote this? He asked, his voice low, disbelieving. I nodded. She lied about me yelling at her, called me a freeloader, said Sophie's needy because of her deafness, mocked her for teaching sign language. Sophie looked down, her hands still. Dad's eyes flicked to her, pain flashing across his face. He kept reading, his hands gripping the phone tighter. She said she can't wait for us to leave, I continued, that she'd rather die than care about us. Mom stepped forward, her voice sharp. She called me a meddling ex, David. Said I'm ruining her life. It's all lies. Dad's face went pale as he read Lisa's comments about counting the days until Sophie stopped coming over. How she hated his time with us. She never told me any of this, he muttered, his voice breaking. She acted like everything was fine. Jake spoke up, his voice bitter. She ignored me, Dad, brushed me off like I wasn't there, and she never learned sign language for Sophie, even when you offered to pay for classes. Sophie signed, her movements sharp. I thought she was trying. I thought it was me. Dad's eyes welled up. He reached for her, but she pulled back, hurt etched on her face. I'm so sorry, Soph, he whispered. I didn't know. I showed him more the threads where Lisa attacked Mom, the comments cheering her on to ditch us. Strangers told her to move away with you and Ethan, I said. They called us your old family, like we don't matter. Dad's hands shook as he set the phone down. This isn't venting, he said, his voice rising. This is hate. He stood, pacing the kitchen, his face a mix of shock and fury. I trusted her. I thought she loved you kids. We sat in silence as he processed it. Then the front door opened. Lisa walked in, freezing when she saw us. David, what's going on? She asked, her voice tight. Dad turned, his eyes blazing. You tell me, Lisa. You wrote this garbage about my kids? About Karen? He held up the phone, his voice shaking. You lied about them, mocked Sophie's disability, and posted it for the world to see. Lisa's face crumpled, but she didn't back down. It was private, she snapped. I needed an outlet. You don't know how hard it is. Hard? Dad cut her off, his voice thunderous. You think it's hard, so you lie about my daughter? You call her names? Say you hate her? He stepped closer, his hands clenched. You knew I'd never abandon my kids. You chose to hide this instead of talking to me. Lisa's eyes darted to me, venomous. She had no right to snoop, she said, pointing at me. Dad shook his head. Don't blame Emma. You did this. The argument escalated, Lisa's voice shrill as she defended herself, claiming she was just venting. Dad wasn't having it. Venting doesn't mean lying, he roared. It doesn't mean hating my kids. Lisa stormed off to her room, room, slamming the door again. Dad sank into a chair, his face in his hands. I didn't see it, he whispered. I didn't see her. My heart ached for him, but the truth was out. Now what? The kitchen was silent after Lisa's door slammed, the air thick with tension. Dad sat slumped at the table, his face buried in his hands. Sophie's eyes were wet, her hands still in her lap. Jake stared at the floor, his jaw tight. Mom stood by the counter, her arms crossed, her face a mix of anger and resolve. I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for something to break the quiet. The truth was out, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt heavy, like we'd all lost something. Dad finally looked up, his eyes red. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice hoarse. I didn't know she felt like this. I thought she cared about you. He looked at Sophie, his voice breaking. I thought she was trying with you, Soph. Sophie signed slowly. It's okay, Dad. But it wasn't. Her small smile couldn't hide the hurt. I wanted to scream at Lisa, to make her see the pain she'd caused, but she was hiding in her room, refusing to face us. Mom spoke, her voice firm. David, I'm not letting Sophie and Jake stay here with someone who thinks like that. It's not safe. Dad nodded, his face grim. I know, Karen. I can't trust her anymore. He stood, pacing again. I'll stay at your place for now, he said, glancing at Mom. I'll come back to see Ethan every day, but I can't be here with her. My heart sank. Ethan, our little half-brother, only 5, caught in the middle of this mess. I thought of his giggles when Sophie played with him, how he'd cling to Dad's leg. What would this do to him? We left the house that evening, piling into Mom's car for the drive back to Salem. Dad followed in his pickup, his face drawn as he glanced back at the house. I wondered what he was thinking, how it felt to realize the woman he loved had been lying for years. At Mom's, we sat in her living room, the familiar creak of the couch grounding me. Dad looked at us, his voice low. I failed you kids, he said. I should have seen it. Jake shook his head. It's not your fault, Dad. She hid it. But Dad's guilt was palpable, his shoulders heavy with it. Over the next few days, things moved fast. Dad stayed at Mom's, sleeping on the couch, while he figured out what to do. He went to Portland daily to see Ethan, but Lisa barely spoke to him. She texted him once, claiming she'd overreacted, but still insisting her posts were just venting. Dad wasn't buying it. She's not sorry, he told me, his voice bitter. She's sorry she got caught. I nodded, my anger flaring. I'd hoped Lisa would at least apologize to Sophie, but she couldn't even do that. Her refusal to own up made her seem smaller, pathetic even. Sophie struggled the most. She'd always been the optimist, believing Lisa's coldness was just a misunderstanding. Now she was quieter, her hands less expressive when she signed. I caught her crying one night, her sketchbook abandoned on the floor. I thought she liked me, she signed, her face crumpling. I hugged her, my throat tight. She doesn't deserve you, Soph, I said. You're better than her. But words couldn't erase the hurt. I hated Lisa for that, for taking away Sophie's trust. Jake, usually so laid back, was angry in a way I'd never seen. She played us all, he said one evening, tossing a basketball against the wall. I thought she was just distant, but she's been hating us this whole time. He paused, his eyes dark. What about Ethan? She's his mom. That question hung over us. Ethan was too young to understand, but he'd feel the fallout. I didn't know how to protect him from this, and it gnawed at me. Mom was a rock, keeping us together. She made sure Sophie and Jake felt safe, cooking their favorite meals, checking in with me about the academy. But I saw the strain in her eyes. Lisa's lies about her had reopened old wounds. I trusted her to be good to you kids, Mom said one night, her voice low. I should have known better. I shook my head. None of us saw it, Mom, but the guilt lingered for all of us. As the days passed, I kept thinking about Lisa's posts. The way she'd twisted our lives to fit her narrative, the strangers who cheered her on it made me question everything. How could someone hide so much hate behind a smile? I'd shared clothes with her, laughed with her, thought we were building something. It felt like a betrayal, not just of me, but of the family Dad had tried to create. I was angry, but I was sad too for Dad, who'd lost his trust in her, for Ethan, who'd grow up in a broken home, for Sophie, whose kindness had been trampled. I kept asking myself, was I wrong to expose her? I'd snooped, sure, but those posts weren't private. They were public, filled with lies that could have ruined us if someone else found them first. If I'd stayed silent, Lisa would have kept pretending, hurting Sophie more, maybe driving a wedge between Dad and us. But part of me wondered if I'd pushed too hard, if I'd broken something that could have been fixed. Dad's pain, Sophie's tears, Ethan's future, it all weighed on me. Sitting in Mom's living room, the rain pattering outside, I looked at my family. Dad, sipping coffee, his face lined with regret. Sophie, sketching again, her hands steadier. Jake, cracking a rare joke to make Mom smile. We were hurt, but we were together. Lisa's lies had tried to tear us apart, but they'd only made us stronger. Still, the question lingered. Did I do the right thing, or did I just make everything worse? I don't know. What do you think?